Bring this meeting together Monday, July 8th, 2024, 3:01. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll do call to order and roll call.
Chair Burke.
Here.
Vice Chair Fuller.
Here.
Board Member Pellerin.
Here.
Board Member Christian. Here. Did it turn it off or on? Is the red light around? There you go. Here. Mr. Chair, we have one.
Well, again, thanks everybody for being here on this warm day. Next will be the approval of our June 10th minutes.
Before we proceed, if anybody has cell phones on the table, please make sure they're airplane mode.
Okay, I have just some typos. Page 2 at the top. I think it should be exists plural, what currently exists at the site, first line. And page 3 of 4, under 5A, other business. Bertagna asked if I think it should be there. Was risk to the tree. Okay, and then the last one is on page 4. First full paragraph starts with McChristian. Right in the middle, asked Galecki if debarking would help prevent spread. The letters are transposed. That's it.
Anyone like to make a motion to approve minutes?
Okay, I move that we approve the minutes from June 10th.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sure, the motion passes.
Third up, visitor communication. Doesn't appear that we have anybody. Moving on to number 4, board business. 4A, discussion of proposed city development code amendment regulating significant private tree removal on a developing lot.
All right. My name is Jacob Smith. I do code enforcement here for the city of Redmond. Redmond, excuse me, sisters. That's the first time I've done that in 2 years, I swear. Just a quick review, in case you guys wasn't the full board last time. As it was said, we have penalties for removing trees illegally during development of a property. A property owner or developer will work with CDD to figure out which trees can be removed and can't be removed. We had one of these trees removed. As the code sits today, it was a $500 penalty. We were again tasked with looking into that, making sure that penalty was high enough to prevent these trees from being removed. With the first meeting with the Urban Forestry Board, I laid out 3 different options. It seemed like there was an option for a penalty per DBH of a tree that was removed. But there was also some talk about adding in an additional penalty or an option for a penalty to get the value of the tree. So I took that information, worked with Scott Woodford and our attorney. This is the language we came up with. Which was exactly what we discussed as far as the first part being a $300 DBH fine per DBH for the trees removal. Now we added in the secondary option, and I'm looking at it as more of an addition or a other option to have the tree, as the wording states, replaced, which is probably not very likely, but then being able to charge for the value of the tree per that appraisal guide listed there on the last sentence. And so we're just here to see if you guys have, if the board has any other thoughts, direction, or if they're happy with this draft.
Jacob, could you clarify, as I read this, it sounds like the base fine will be the base fine always. And then in addition, you could put on the supplemental replacement fine. So if the base fine was, let me see, I figured out for that tree in question that came down from Woodlands, it would have been 14,400 plus or minus instead of $500. Would we, and then if this source said that, well, that tree was worth $17,000, would they be charged then another 17,000 or the delta in between?
So the way it's written, I would argue you could do it either way.
Mhm.
We did get a warning from our attorney about doubling up too much. The more you do that, the better chance you have of litigation posted. My first action would be, I would look at the number one base fine and see what that cost was. And then if there was other factors that contributed to it, I would be looking for what the value of the tree would be and seeing what the cost would be there. I would be, it would have to be real bad, really egregious, to double up with the DBH and the value of the tree combined. So more likely than not, if I was looking at a tree situation, it would be the greater of the two. However, there is the option for a lot of money and using them both at the same time.
Thank you.
If you could refresh my memory, what is the decisions, or how do you come across authorized removal of trees versus unauthorized?
Right, so this section of code, the 3.2, I believe it's all 3.2500, outlines how and why we would remove trees. So a developer will come in and they'll put in their application, and they'll meet with, at this point, one of the planners, and they'll go over all of the trees that are significant, and which ones are going to stay and which ones are not. And then once that's decided, then that's when this penalty would come in. So if they went in and they just said, hey, we're going to keep this tree, and they ended up bumping it over on accident or removing it intentionally, that's when this penalty would come in. And if that didn't answer your question specifically, the actual wording of what trees they're are going to keep and how, I don't know off the top of my head, but it is in this portion of code.
And you use the word developer, and that's in general commercial and residential?
Anytime that you would be required to to develop a site. So that can be private, it can be commercial. It's just, it's a site that hasn't been used, and then you're going to go put something on it, would trigger this. And that, so houses all the way up to commercial buildings, again, the goal preserving the large significant trees.
So maybe Paul too, maybe you have a perspective on this, but say somebody's intended to preserve a tree, they find out, hey, this really isn't going to be feasible. There's some method by which they can kind of come to the city at that point, or is there a way that they can kind of mitigate that situation through communication rather than just through taking action?
Yeah, they can come in and work with the planners if there's something going on, and the planners can modify those plans if need be.
Sometimes they listen to that, sometimes they don't, which we've seen, truthfully.
And that's where the added fee could come in if they literally took it down after they had asked and they were denied that. I think it's good to have that section 2 in there, that supplemental. And I get what you're saying, what the attorney's saying. Let's not get too crazy with it, but I mean, just to read that would maybe make somebody think a little harder about taking down a tree. As far as the developers go. So I saw that mapping is required of existing significant trees that are going to be retained, and identify that these are the ones we're going to keep. And in that case of Woodlands, that was a tree that should have been retained and was not. And my understanding is they did not come to our community development director and ask for a change to that plan. So if this was in effect, like Teresa had said, that then we would have been looking at a $14,400 fine and potentially on top of that, the additional supplemental one if so chosen. So I really like the way this was worded, and I like the way that the options laid out here for that example. I tried to bounce some scenarios off of it and it felt right to me. And then I looked back at, Dan had given us the Cold Springs from something back in 2019 where 3 trees were taken down and done that appraisal. Because I want to get an idea of how much was this plant appraisal fee possibly would be. And I noticed in that 2019 report that a tree of the DBH of 14 inches came out to be about $3,200. So it kind of gave me an idea that, yeah, that second supplemental fee could actually be a good chunk of change as well. So I'm happy with what I see here.
Paul, do you remember how much those trees cost on South Pine? There was about 5 or 6, got to the front page of the Nugget. The guy, it was city right-of-way trees that he ended up taking down. And then we had some discussion about thousands, and we met on hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exact amounts or even close.
So we had
I
we
think
had
it was
something that,
probably around 20.
yeah.
And then I think they settled for a few thousand, something like that.
Yeah, there was thousands per tree. Like we had something that, or we speaking as the city kind of hunkered in on, this was really right down this avenue of, they were told not to cut them. Conversations not to cut them, went ahead and already cut them. And so I feel that like the precedence there already really kind of been set on the value of the tree. Like, so I just think that the numbers of that $14,000 tree, like, I don't know how that's really gonna get enforced with the precedence of already, we're talking a couple hundred per tree, so I'm kind of a little worried on that moving forward.
As far as recovery,
Yeah, the value. So,
yeah, recovery in this circumstance is a little easier, because once the fine is issued, it's associated with the land. Then we can do liens. But since they're in the middle of development, we also can hold up permits. So the recovery in this one versus other realms of code enforcement is a little easier. And just from working with developers in the past, that's usually not one thing, they want. They've been easier to deal with than the private as far as recovery. So the recovery, me personally, I'm not worried about it. I don't think it's any different than what we would have to do for any other code enforcement.
It's been all over the board on these fines, how they've been levied, how they've been decided upon, the final amount, kind of like going to traffic court, right? Some people get off their tickets, some people get reduction, some people pay full amount. Depends up to the judge, which is the city manager at that point. So we saw a tree that had a value of over 30 grand get dropped, and they ended up settling for like 15. Big amount, but it could have been more. So it's one of those things that staff can't control, and obviously you guys can make the recommendation.
oh, all right, well, then I'm good with it. As long as it's not like judge and jury and there's still another step past what this is to allow for mediation and,
Right, so they have, if Paul was talking about probably a different way it was done, we do have a new private or civil penalty that we can issue now where it goes through hearings officer. So if, you know, they wanted to appeal, they would have an option to go have a hearing instead of a judge, would have a hearings officer, which is an attorney. And they would run it almost similar to a court, and they wouldn't be making the ultimate determination if it is appealed. So there should be a little more consistency in it, opposed to prior to the official code enforcement program.
Well, I'm good with it. I just wanted to circle back to something you said, Cheryl, which is that relative to the tree that was felled at the Woodlands, my understanding from talking to the developer after the tree was felled was that they had been in conversation with the city
Mm,
and they opted, it wasn't his personal decision, he's not the owner, but they opted to take down the tree anyway, even though they were doing some kind of back and forth with the planning staff about maybe a variance and then maybe bundling some of the lots together who had a similar which had a similar problem, but that might take some time to work out. So they opted to drop the tree.
mm.
So I think I mean, to me, it's one of those cases where, well, that was so unfortunate, very unfortunate. And I'm happy that now the city's putting something in place to have more teeth to go after somebody who does that.
Mhm. What about projects like East Portal and the roundabout here? Do they fall under the development code? Is that something different?
Paul, do you know the?
Yeah, they're public property jobs. Some we have jurisdiction over, some we don't. So we didn't have jurisdiction over the roundabout, but we do over East Portal.
Okay.
Which is why we brought you the phase one master plan, so you can
Yeah.
look at that. And then if anything happens outside of what we brought to you, we'll have to bring it back again for approval,
Okay.
whether we need to take another tree or, you know, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say thanks to you, Jacob, for taking our comments in and making what I think is a pretty good recommendation here. And I hope that people don't have to, you know, nobody has to get this fine, and really it's just seen as a deterrent for people to follow the processes that they're supposed to follow. So, you know, making it a good deterrent, I think, is nice. It seems like there's quite a bit of reason to try to avoid doing that. So, yeah, thanks.
No problem. Appreciate your guys' time.
Do we want to make a motion for this?
We need to make a motion.
Or with it being just a discussion, we don't need to make a motion?
I don't need a motion.
Okay,
Well, you're
Well-
gonna be taking these to council, right?
It still has to go through,
Planning commission.
planning commission and then council.
So probably would be good to have a motion on the record, a recommendation to approve the code language as written.
Okay. I move that the text for 3.2.500 additional penalties under Part F be approved. That our recommendation as the Forestry Board is that it get approved as written.
I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jacob.
Joshua.
And thank you also for the cover. I don't know if you wrote it, but whoever wrote this cover sheet, it's fabulous.
Did write it.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see. Welcome, Dan. We'll move on to board business B, recommendation to remove declining aspen, 709 Birch Street.
Yes, included in the packet is my report for the aspen. It's declining. There's really no way that aspen's gonna recover at this time of year. And also has a lien, and probably most importantly, for that particular neighborhood, we discussed several times in the past that aspens are not really desirable in that area, in that particular neighborhood. So with all these factors combined, I made a recommendation for this particular tree to be removed.
I concur. Should anybody have any discussion on this one? This one's pretty cut.
No,
and
I
dry.
agree.
We'll make a motion. I'd like to make a quick motion on that one.
I move for the removal of the aspen located at 709 South Birch Street per Dan's report.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to board business C. Recommendation to remove dead ponderosa pine at 385 East Jefferson.
So once again, that tree is fairly obvious. That should be removed. So my recommendation, once again, is to remove that particular tree at 385 Jefferson.
Yeah, I drove by this one and it's dead as dead gets, so.
Yeah.
I don't. Anyone have any other
No, I agree. Should be
comments on
removed.
that? Anything we need to do about the insect infestation or potential of it spreading to the surrounding areas?
At this time of year, the bugs have already flown. It's always a good precaution to remove the debris and especially the bole and the larger branches as soon as possible. But as the summer goes on, the likelihood of bugs infecting other trees is less and less.
I'd like to make a motion.
I move that the ponderosa pine at 385 East Jefferson Avenue be removed.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, Dan, for all your help on that, on these reports and getting that stuff to us. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Moving on to other business. Miscellaneous issues for the board information and specific trees in public right of way and parks.
Well, I got two trees that we have issues with, or one that we had an issue with, which was about a 10-inch birch over in front of the clubhouse at Pine Meadow Village. It was a street tree, completely dead. It was declining last year and just dead this year. And during all the wind that we had 2-3 weeks ago, they were worried about it blowing over. They got a parking lot right there, plus the street. So we authorized that they could remove that and replant it. So the second one is a big pine tree down at 68980 North Pine Street, just north of Barkley. You've probably seen it. It's red and dead.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, it stands out. You can see it from quite a ways away. We're trying to determine the ownership of the tree, and we checked with our engineer, and he looked at his records and determined that the property pin is somewhere underneath that tree. And we don't know where. So, and it's a very funky part of town because it's up against actual Forest Service property, not city property, and then you got a county strip in there. And then the city is allowed to have the street under an easement with the Forest Service. So we're looking to just get the thing removed. If you guys are okay with it, and then we will work with the county and the Forest Service to make sure that we.
What was
have
that address
authorization.
again? The
What's
address-
that?
The address again?
68980. So it'd be the northeast corner of Barkley and Pine. Directly across the street from the new self-storage on Pine.
As far as tree health, I can agree with that tree being 100% dead, and it's been dead for several months. And yes, the property ownership line is a problem on that particular tree.
So are you suggesting, Paul, the city just take it down,
Yeah. Mostly to try to get
get it done?
it out of there, get the bugs.
Yeah.
Safety hazard to Pine Street, obviously. Neighboring properties, yeah.
Anything else?
No, if I get a head nod, if you guys are okay with
Mhm.
that,
Yeah.
Yes,
okay, great. We will have our arborists take care of it. All I have.
I have a question.
Shoot,
Will there be trees in the new roundabout in the middle?
in the middle?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. That's to be
I vote
determined
yes.
through a pretty long public art process
Okay.
on how that works.
Yeah.
It's possible.
I don't see any plumbing for water.
We got 4 sleeves going into there from every corner, so there's a lot of conduit going to it.
So you could get water in there.
Absolutely, we will have water in there. There'll be some type of landscaping, I'm sure.
Okay.
ODOT does like to have visual barriers in the center roundabouts,
Mm-hmm.
which is why they approved the Barkley configuration, just because they don't want people looking through.
Mm-hmm.
They want them focusing on the traffic coming directly toward them versus trying to anticipate what's happening straight across.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But they don't have one at the old Ben Redmond new roundabout or the Roble. Cause you see,
that's the reason they stacked up the dirt with the rock, was just to try to create that visual barrier.
we see racing stripes over them every once in a while.
People driving right over them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We're not gonna have that. There'll be something big and in their way
So,
with probably a lot of concrete around it.
all right.
How will we know when that discussion is taking place about the roundabout?
So the art process Carrie is working with, some people associated with the Art Association, Art in Public Places in Bend. They've assembled kind of an advisory committee, and they will do a call for artists, Pacific Northwest wide at least. They may even go back to Rocky Mountains. They'll get the submittals, they will narrow it down to a certain amount, and then those will get displayed somewhere in public for people to vote on what they like. And then whatever the top vote getter is, they will agree to take it to city council, and city council making the final decision.
Mhm.
So it's
Okay.
about a year-long process,
Oh, my goodness.
just for the art. And once you have the art, then we'll do an RFP for landscape design, because it's got to work with the artist. And
Mhm.
so that's kind of when you'll see more of the tree discussion happen. Yep.
That's a long process,
Yeah,
but I understand.
it is.
Similar to what happens in Bend. when they-
Very important, it worked out really well. We did the same process. We had to go nationwide because we were using federal dollars for Barkley, and it turned out great.
Oh, yeah, I like
The community really felt like they had a say,
Mhm.
It was good.
Thank you.
Now that you asked that, Teresa, I've been kind of wondering if this may be a really different process, but around the big pine tree that we've had discussions about, if there's any possibility of removing some of that backfill out away from the trunk, because they've kind of buried the roots in 6 or 8 inches of soil. You know, and the final product, if they could remove that, it'd really help the tree out, I think. So I don't know if that zone is gonna eventually be.
I can definitely make ODOT aware of that.
Oh, cool.
Yep. And we can make that a recommendation from the board if you guys are okay with that.
We're talking about the roundabout tree.
Yeah, yeah, and if the original grade was maintained around that tree as much as possible, I think it would reduce the kind of smothering, it's not necessarily smothering.
Yep.
Smothering the roots there with all that additional backfill.
For sure.
And it looks like it's possible, but I have no idea what all is gonna, going in there, so.
Yeah, they definitely have to, it'll be less than what you think because they have to have some backfill up against the sidewalk as well as the travel lane and the curbing. But from there, they should be able to pull some material back, I would think. I would hope to. Yeah, I can let the ODOT inspectors know that.
Is there any plan for that tree to get water?
Definitely.
Good.
Yep. Yep.
We'll go roundtable for board comments. Avery? You have anything?
I did have one, and we can talk about it at the next meeting if you want. It's just, there's a little option for us to participate in the new Oregon Regional Tree List that the ODF is working on. So it's open for discussion at this point. If we have any comments, if you guys have noticed particular trees that do really well on the east side of the Cascades or that we use in Sisters that have been, good for us, I think they could be recommended to this list, and it's intended to kind of be used for municipalities that don't have the resources, maybe like we have a board and everything here, but some places like maybe, Metolius or Culver don't have a lot of those kind of resources. They could utilize this list that has a narrative and recommendations on trees that are suitable for this area. So I could share that and we could have it next meeting maybe if you guys
Yeah.
wanted to look it over.
Can you
And-
email it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we could provide some comments and feedback. Kind of a neat opportunity. That's it
Great.
for me.
Yeah, we'll get a copy of that and have it sent out to us. We'll review it and chat about it next meeting.
Yeah.
Put that down as a board discussion.
Only thing I had was a question to Dan. If you're seeing, I don't know what the average death rate should be of trees, but are we kind of right there in the norm, or are you seeing an increase or a decrease, or where are we at in terms of death rate? I hate to use that term, but
So, with most of my experience, well, the city of Sisters is actually too small to have any kind of a trend really pop out. Yes, I agree that heat and drought and bugs are a factor, and I think it's more than in the past. There's no tangible math or anything to really back that up, but that's my personal belief. But in my other jobs, we do have the data to look at regions. And yes, it's true. Drought, bugs, stress, pollution, all these bad things do affect trees. And then this last 10 or 15 years, there has been a trend of declining forest health region wide. So to reflect that on an urban environment, I could see how that could that train of thought can be similar.
okay, thank you. I did send to Jackson today, a declining tree. Doesn't look like it's gonna make it to Ponderosa on Creekside Drive. I don't know if it's in right of way, so I didn't know if that was the appropriate protocol to send you the pictures, Jackson. Is that,
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't have time to respond to you. I was getting ready
Oh,
for this meeting.
yeah.
That was, Dan prepared a report on that tree.
okay,
January
okay,
last year.
Oh.
It was at 1177 East Creekside Court. It is in the right of way. It was marked for observation.
Okay.
Taken a pretty
Yeah, it has. Okay. So at some point, does that come back in front of us again, in a report from Dan? I mean, how do you go back and, are these just on a constant monitoring cycle?
Yes and yes.
Yes and yes.
We can
Yeah.
ask for the report.
Yeah, so when the tree is monitored, well, I'm living in Roseburg now, but usually I notice these trees, and then as they get worse or better, I follow up on that.
Okay.
However, I do appreciate pictures and other notes of recent developments. I do have a record of that particular tree from the winter, and I even bored it with my core, and there was no blue stain at the time. But yeah, there was some problems with that particular tree, and we got to keep an eye out.
Okay. And you're confirming it's in the right of way then? Yeah. Okay, thanks.
It's kind of hard to see. What you sent me, just how much was it the ground? Did you notice any trees still?
Yeah, there's a portion, I almost want to say 75 brown to 25 green at this point. And it does seem like it accelerated.
Applies to my area.
I just didn't have the Forester eye on it, so I can't tell you. Yeah.
Dan, I'll go out and take a couple photos and send those over. Just in case you have any insight.
Well, with your forestry verbal voice, I can already see or hear that that's not good news.
Yeah. I drive by it every day and I'm
Yeah.
just now really seeing it get browner and browner.
Yeah.
That's all.
Put that for board business for next meeting. Correct. Teresa?
So my understanding is we're not gonna see heritage trees on the city council workshop agenda in July. And fair to say it hasn't been determined where it will land.
Right now, it's landing, I believe, the last council meeting of August. Let me just pull it down really quick.
Yeah, council only has one meeting in July, so.
Slackers.
The 28th.
Of August.
So those workshops typically start at 5. In case you guys want to mark your calendar to be there.
Mhm.
Thanks for staying on top of that, Teresa.
I am. That's all I have.
I will not be able to make that.
Summer, if you have any input that you want to send to the council, you could send it in writing or tell me or.
I don't have much different on what we've already agreed upon. With the form and whatnot, so it'd
Right.
be more for support being here, but I'm on duty that day. So,
Gotcha.
Bill, was there anything else?
Mm-mm.
The only thing I have is I've been in discussion with the fire department with Dave Moyer and the tree or whatever we'd like to do. So I'm trying to incorporate some ideas of what we have planned or what we'd like to do on top of what they have going on. So just with the fire chief retiring and bringing our new fire chief, they've been a little busy. So it's still on their agenda, their radar, but hopefully I'll be able to get back to that when I get back from my vacation. So go from there. So does anybody have anything else to add?
Thanks for checking on that and getting back to us.
Yeah. So meeting adjourned 3:41. We'll see everybody next month.
In August.
Yep, August. 12th. I will be on duty that day, so I will not be able to attend. As a heads up, so I'll be here in September.
Okay,
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
thanks, Dan.